Welcome back, everyone. We're doing another fun episode of Indie Reads Aloud. As you all know, I love it when people read out loud to me, and I love discovering new authors and their books. I am Diana Catherine Penn, your host for today. And today, our special guest is Sandy Schachter, and she's written a memoir with creative nonfiction and biography, and it's really a wonderful amalgamation of her life and the memories of her mother and other family members. So this is going to be a really, really fun read today. Welcome, Sandy. I'm glad you could join us.
Thank you, Diane. It's a pleasure to be here.
So those of you who haven't met Sandy like me, because we met before at an event, she is an educator, counselor, and author whose life journey has been shaped by a deep commitment to understanding and helping others. She was born in London, raised in the United States. Her experiences of migration and cultural transitions inspire her storytelling, particularly her exploration of family history and resilience. With a background in psychology and education, Sandy brings emotional depth and authenticity to her writing, weaving together personal narratives with historical significance. She's now retired after a fulfilling career in counseling, and Sandy dedicates her time to preserving her family's legacy through poignant and heartfelt stories that connect generations. And I think this is a wonderful mission for
Thank you.
you. I think there's nothing more important than maintaining our family's histories and legacies.
Yes,
So I think it's a wonderful thing that you're bringing this book out into the world.
thank you.
So, how did your journey to bring this book together begin? Did you start with stories from family? Did you discover journals and letters? How did you first make the decision that this was a story you needed to share?
Well, my mother developed diabetes very late in life, and it really did a number on her, basically turned her heart to mush. And when I was in the hospital with her, but right before she passed away, I held her hand and she apologized to me. She said, "I'm really sorry that I'm not leaving behind a legacy for you." And I thought, no, you did leave a legacy for me. You left me your stories. You left me
Mm.
all of the things, the struggles that you went through growing up. Um, and that I would never forget her stories, that I would always hold them and remember them in my heart. And that's how I got the title, An Unforgotten Heart, because I always wanted to carry her legacy. And I wanted to write it down so that I could pass it on to my daughter, who could pass it on to her generation, who could pass it on, just to validate that my mother lived and she was an important person in her own right. And that's,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we understand how each life touches another life,
Mhm.
whether we know those people personally or not. I think it's one of the great things that Spielberg did with the Shoah Foundation was to show us that every life was interconnected, even if at a distance. So I love that you're bringing this collection of stories out into the world. So maybe people can find a touchstone with them the way you have.
I hope so. I hope so.
So
And the
tell me,
family is important. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So tell me, what was your favorite part about preparing to write this book?
I think the two things I had to worry about the most were how is it going to begin and how is it going to end? Because I needed to decide where I wanted to pick up the story and where I wanted it to end. And I picked up the story based on the picture that's on the front of the book. The picture on the front of the book is this picture.
Yep.
It's a picture of my grandmother and my mother and her sisters. So I stared at this picture for years and years and years, and finally decided that's where I'm going to start. So that's how the book begins, with the story of this picture.
Excellent. I am really excited to hear you read a little bit of this for us today.
Thank you.
Again, the book is An Unforgotten Heart. And Sandy, when you are ready, please take the microphone and read aloud.
Okay, I got to get my timer. Okay. The book has 47 chapters, and I'm going to be reading from chapter 5.
Excellent.
It's called The Lessons. Mama was uncharacteristically pleased with Elsa working for the Schmidts. Late that evening, as Mama was saying her goodnights before bed, she whispered in Elsa's ear, "The best place to hide is in plain sight." She had no idea what Mama meant, but because she gave her permission to continue to work for the Schmidts, she did not think it was her place to ask many questions. Gerda and Marga reminded Elsa of Blanche and Hilda. They got along so well when their parents were around, but when they were alone in the playroom, chaos reigned all the time. They would argue over toys, who got to wear ribbons in her hair, and what to ask their mother for dinner. It was surprising that Eva cooked so many of the evening meals. They were certainly wealthy enough to hire a cook, but Colonel Schmidt refused to have people in the house other than family. As the nanny, Elsa had assumed that she was welcomed as a family member, but just as the girls were different when they were not with their parents, Colonel Schmidt was different when his wife was not around. The girls learned their behavior from their father. Gerda and Margot will need to learn new behaviors from me, thought Elsa. She could tell that would be a struggle for them as well as for her. Lesson number 1, sharing is a choice that brings benefits to everyone. One morning, Elsa found Gerda and Margot fighting over a stuffed bear in the playroom. The bear was tattered and torn, and she could tell it had been well played with quite roughly. She sat them down on the floor, taking the bear away from them. "Since it's clear you both want to play with the bear, and since there is only one of him and two of you, I believe the only choice is to get a knife and slice him down the middle so that you can each have a half to play with. That is the fairest way to play with the bear," said Elsa, trying to keep a straight face. She knew she was taking a gamble. What if they agreed with her? Would it be in their nature to sacrifice a beloved toy for their selfishness? Could this be a lesson learned from their parents that she must help them unlearn? Margot looked at Gerda and said, "I don't want to play with half a bear. I want to play with the whole bear." Gerda replied, "Me too." So here was her opportunity to chime in with a reasonable solution. "Girls, how about we let Margot play with him first today and Gerda can play with him first tomorrow, and then you take turns each day. I'll put a chart on the wall that keeps track so that you can play with the bear equally," she said, wondering if they would agree with her. She waited for about 6 minutes and finally got a reply. "Okay," said Gerda. "Maybe we should do that with all of our toys," said Margot. "That is a great idea, girls. You know, sharing is a choice that benefits everyone, including Mr. Bear. This way, he won't have little girls playing with him all the time. You are so smart to think of this." Helping the girls learn how to respect their toys by taking turns to play with them was not difficult. Elsa was not sure if she could teach them how to make human choices with respect to people. Lesson number 2, all people, even those that don't look like you, deserve your respect. Each morning, Elsa took the girls with her around the city. It was always a long walk for them, but it was the only real exercise they each had. It was important to make these outings memorable because when they returned, the daily lessons would begin. Math, reading, languages, and practicing cursive were to be completed by lunchtime. After lunch, they would take a nap, and then they would play in their playroom until dinner. After dinner, they would bathe and go to sleep. They seemed to look forward to the morning outings. Elsa would make up places to go each day to give them some fresh air. On special days, when they had worked hard on their lessons and didn't argue, she would take them to the park and ride the Reason Rod, a giant Ferris wheel. They would sit in the car so quietly with all the other children and enjoy going around and around. Looking above the city would give them a new perspective on the world below. It was scary for them at first to understand they were only a small speck in the big world, but when they would get off the Ferris wheel, they were back to being as big as everyone around them. Elsa and the girls were becoming close. They often referred to Elsa when speaking to others as their big sister. Elsa came very close to telling them that she really did have sisters, but she was afraid to reveal too much about herself in case they shared that information with their parents. Elsa had wanted her relationship with the girls to be close, but with the Schmidts, it was all business. It seemed that lesson number 2 would be an easy one for the girls. They had always shown respect to adults in Elsa's presence. However, a trip to the butcher would show their true colors and teach her that her instincts were not correct. The morning started a bit slow. Margot was lagging behind and getting dressed in time for Elsa's arrival at 8 a.m. Usually the girls would wait for her at the bottom of the staircase as she opened the door. Gerda was sitting on the step holding Mr. Bear. She looked very pleased with herself. Not only had she gotten to Mr. Bear before Margot, she was also dressed in her best walking shoes. Margot can't find her pink ribbon. She's mad, said Gerda. Since Elsa knew Margot had left it in the playroom the day before, she asked Gerda to go and get it like a good little sister. Several minutes later, Margot skipped down the stairs as happy as could be. Crisis averted. It was about a 35-minute walk to Mr. Ernst's butchery. Eva had given Elsa a shopping list of sausages, veal, and pork loin. With people expected for dinner that night, this would be a very heavy load and would require all their arms and some very strong legs. Upon entering the shop, Margot noticed that there were a bit of a crowd waiting in line. Several of the women in line ahead of them were Jewish Orthodox. They were wearing scarves around their heads and noticeable wigs underneath. Elsa had recognized them from the ghetto. Most often, these women never ventured out of the ghetto for anything, but Elsa knew that Mr. Ernst had wonderful connections to a slaughterhouse outside of Vienna that often supplied them with the kind of quality meat that was not available in the ghetto. Mr. Butcher, yelled Margaret from the back of the shop, my sisters and I demand that you let us go to the head of the line. These Jews can wait and get our leftovers. How can a 6-year-old have the nerve or the audacity to speak in such a way? Elsa did not want the rest of the customers to think she felt that way, so she blurted out, no, no, no. She didn't mean to ask that we go to the head of the line. We'll wait our turn. Elsa was so embarrassed she could hardly look at Margot. She wanted to slap her across the face, but held her emotions at bay. Elsa knew that Margot really meant to say. Margot, as a Christian, was to get better treatment in the shop than Jews. It broke Elsa's heart. She wanted to pull the girls away and leave the store, but she needed the meat more than she needed to confront Margot about her comment. That was a discussion she needed to have in private. Margot was just a child. It would not be necessary to embarrass her in public. Standing behind Elsa, there were several other customers who stared at her and looked shocked. One of those women just happened to be Elsa's mama and her sisters, Hilda and Blanche. Elsa's face turned beet red. She would have some explaining to do when she got home that night. However, that would not be as hard as what she had to explain to Margot and Gerda, and she knew she had to have that conversation before they went back home. It wasn't necessary to ask Margot where she got such a notion about how Jews were to be treated. It was clear that Colonel Schmidt and his wife had little regard and no respect for Jews and passed those feelings on to the girls. On the one hand, Elsa was relieved that she never told the Schmidts she was Jewish. Yet on the other hand, she hated living a lie. Perhaps she was just like her mother, keeping secrets and telling lies. When Elsa and the girls finally reached the counter, Mr. Ernst seemed to have forgotten Margot's comments about Jews. He was extremely pleasant to Elsa, and even though she had vowed in the past to be cordial to the shopkeepers, she decided now was the time to be friendly again. She gave him her order and waited extremely patiently. She even thanked the people who were standing behind her for their patience. The walk home was torture. The girls needed to carry some of the meat that Elsa could not, and they complained the whole way. Can we stop for a few minutes? My feet hurt, said Margot. Stopping will not make your feet hurt less, but we'll stop at the park for a few minutes to figure out a better way to carry all this food, said Elsa, which made Gerda very happy. There was a beautiful park on the way to the Schmidt's house. Finding an empty bench was difficult as the park was very crowded. A very nice man who was reading a book saw that Elsa was struggling with the girls. He got her from the bench and he was sitting on the bench and gave them a seat. Danke, kind sir, said Elsa. Elsa took off Margot's shoes and rubbed her feet. Margot, please explain to me why you said what you did at the butcher shop. The colonel's father, that's what the girls called their father, told her some Jewish told one that the colonel, that's what the girls called the father, once told some Jewish men to move out of the way on the streets. He told me that we must always ask Jews to step aside for us because God wants all Jews to walk in our footsteps and we must obey God's laws. Margot's words rang in Elsa's head like powerful bells. She couldn't say what she really wanted to say. After all, she was talking to children, not adults. Just as she was about to say something, the noonday bells from the nearby tower chimed loudly, which gave Elsa time she needed to choose her words carefully. It seems to me the God your father prays to worships hate and exclusion, said Elsa. When the bell stopped, Elsa caught her breath, placed the shoes back on Margot's feet, and made sure she had both girls in her eye line. My dearest Margot and Gerda, please listen to me very carefully. I want to explain something to you. I learned a long time ago from my parents exclusion. Exclusion is the highest form of inhumanity. She knew they were too young to understand her meaning, so she had to find the words they would understand. She could tell by the looks on the faces they were confused. Margot, I want to play a game with you. And Gerda called, what if? Let's say you went to the toy store to buy a new doll. What if the store owner said that he could not sell any dolls to girls with pink ribbons in her hair? Margot looked at her. That's not fair. I have money to pay for a doll, and my pink ribbon is beautiful. That's correct. You are beautiful. And that pink ribbon in your hair, so are Jewish people. They are beautiful inside, and it isn't fair that they would have to walk in your footsteps. I believe God would want all people to be respected. It was a message she wasn't sure would sink in, as her beliefs were in such contrast to those beliefs that had been taught to them long before they met her. Jews are dirty people. They smell bad and have big noses, said Gerda, with a quizzical look on her face. Gerda, I am not dirty. I don't have a big nose, and I don't smell bad. What if, what if I told you I was Jewish? Elsa could not look directly into their faces. She did not want to see the hatred they would have for her in her eyes, so she turned away from them. Time went on so slowly at that very moment. Suddenly she felt two arms around her legs and two arms around her waist. Don't worry, Elsa, said Margot. God will find a way to love you as much as I do. The number of guests that were to arrive at the Schmidts for dinner made it necessary for Eva to hire servants. Elsa would be required to work longer hours in order to watch over the girls, so Eva could attend with her guests. When Elsa arrived back at the house, she found it busy with servants and cooks preparing for the evening feast. Girls, since I'm going to be with you tonight, I will have to go home and change my clothes. I'm going to be helping in the dining room after you go to bed, so I need to look nicer. This was in part truth and in part a lie. She had known that she would be spending additional hours at the Schmidt's house and had brought extra clothes, but she knew she needed to get away for a while and think about why telling them she was Jewish made her so sad. She needed to see her big sisters. Before I go, I must speak with you about something. Gathering them around her, she could see they looked very confused. You must keep my secret in your heart and not on your lips. You must not tell anyone that I'm Jewish. Not even God? Asked Margot. I believe God already knows because he gave me the love of my family and the opportunity to be in your lives. I love you girls very much, and I want to take care of you until you're old enough not to need me anymore. Seeing the tears in Gerda's eyes and the smile on Margot's face, she knew they would keep the secret. The walk back to her home would not take long. Elsa found herself drawn to the park they sat in on their way home from the butcher. Sitting on that bench, she found herself in tears once more. For so long, she had been angry with Mama for hiding the fact they were Jewish from the rest of the world, as well as from her and her sisters. Now she was asking two little girls to keep her heritage a secret from their parents and the rest of the world. Elsa knew she owed Mama an apology. She also knew that having to apologize for being Jewish to anyone wasn't right, and she wondered if Mama knew it also. Oh my, exclusion is the highest form of inhumanity.
Thank you.
Chapter 5.
Thank you very much. That's a very powerful chapter.
Thank you.
As you were writing this book, what did you find was one of the stumbling blocks or one of the difficulties of getting through to the end?
I guess it just brought up so many memories. I was sad and happy and worried and just afraid. I was afraid to confront those things that my mother confronted. She had to hide she was Jewish. They didn't look Jewish. They never actually wore Star of David's because nobody ever thought they were Jewish. But there was such contradiction that my mother grew up with. In fact, even when we came to the United States, my parents were reluctant to go and join a synagogue because anti-Semitism was so prevalent in their life.
Sure.
And the truth is, it's still prevalent today.
Absolutely.
I mean, those things just never go away. So the hardest part was just validating your own heritage and your own existence. And that was very emotional for me, very emotional.
As I can well imagine. Absolutely. Do you have anything coming up next? Are you working on another book?
No, I'm not working on another book, but I am in negotiations with a movie company for a possible movie.
That's exciting.
So we're still negotiating, but it looks good. So
Nice.
we'll see. We will see.
Exciting.
Yeah,
Oh, I hope that you will come back and share with us again if that movie becomes a thing or if you decide to write another book. I know that in the green room you told us that you wrote poetry for a while.
yeah.
So I was wondering if maybe you might create a collection of poetry.
Oh, that would be wonderful. I think I would like to do that. My poetry is written specifically for middle school. I think middle schoolers have a horrible time in middle school
Oh, I agree.
because they're learning about who they are, what they want in the world,
Where they fit,
where they fit, and where they can, who their people are, where they come from.
right?
And so a lot of those poems are about that. And I think maybe I could put all of that together into some kind of cohesive format that perhaps maybe I'll write down and write a book.
I think that would be a wonderful gift to young readers.
Yeah, I think so too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on the program today.
Well, thank you for
And
having
I
me.
I appreciate you sharing your book, An Unforgotten Heart, and I look forward to reading it as well.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.